They called me a nobody at the battalion ceremony. Said it loud enough for the front row to hear. Colonel Hartman didn't whisper it, he wanted everyone to know what he thought of me. I stood at attention. Said nothing. Because in 3 minutes, a 4-star general was going to walk onto that stage. And when he saw me, he was going to salute. But I didn't tell them that. The ceremony was at Fort Bragg. Annual awards and recognition. The kind of event where careers get highlighted, and officers get their moment in the sun. Dress blues. Families in the bleachers. Photographers from the base newspaper, positioning themselves for the perfect shot. I was there as part of the support staff. At least, that's what everyone assumed. 26 years old. Staff sergeant. Intelligence analyst. The kind of soldier who blends into the background, while more decorated officers take the spotlight. I'd been at Bragg for 6 months. Transferred from, well, I couldn't say where I'd transferred from. That was classified. My assignment was listed as administrative support to J2 operations. Vague. Boring. The kind of job description that makes people's eyes glaze over when you explain it at the dining facility. Colonel Hartman was the ceremony coordinator. 48 years old. Career infantry officer. 2 bronze stars. A combat infantryman badge he mentioned in every conversation. He had very specific ideas about what real soldiers looked like, and intelligence analysts, especially young ones, especially female ones, didn't fit his vision. I'd met him twice before. Once during in-processing, where he'd looked at my records and said, "Intelligence, huh? Must be nice working in air conditioning." And once at a staff meeting, where he'd made a joke about PowerPoint Rangers, while looking directly at me. I hadn't corrected him either time. The ceremony started at 10:00 hours. I was assigned to manage the roster. Make sure awards recipients were in the right place at the right time. Coordinate with the audio tech. Basic logistics. The kind of work that happens behind the scenes, while everyone else gets recognized in front of hundreds of people. Colonel Hartman found me 30 minutes before the ceremony started. I was checking the roster one final time, making sure the general's arrival was properly coordinated with base security. "Staff Sergeant," he said, looking at my name tape. "Porter, right?" "Yes, sir." "You're the one handling logistics today?" "Yes, sir." He frowned. Looked at the clipboard in my hand like it was a toy. "This ceremony is important. We have a 4-star general attending. General McKinley. Do you understand the significance of that?" "Yes, sir. I need someone competent managing this. Not some analyst who's never coordinated anything more complex than a briefing slide." He took the clipboard from my hands. Flipped through it like he was checking my work. "Did you even verify the general's itinerary with his aide?" "Yes, sir. 3 times. The general arrives at 09:45. He'll enter through the east entrance. Security is coordinated. His aide, Colonel Stevens, confirmed everything yesterday." Hartman handed the clipboard back. Reluctantly. "Fine. But if anything goes wrong today, anything, it's on you. Understand?" "Yes, sir." He started to walk away, then stopped. Turned back. "You know what your problem is, Porter? You're a nobody trying to play coordinator for an event with real soldiers. People who've actually done something. People who matter." He gestured at the stage being set up. "These officers being recognized today? They've led men in combat. They've made decisions that saved lives. What have you done? Analyzed some reports? Run some databases?" I didn't answer. Didn't need to. "That's what I thought," he said. "Just stay out of the way and try not to embarrass the battalion." He walked off. Confident. Certain of his assessment. I went back to checking the roster. 40 minutes later, the ceremony began. National anthem. Opening remarks. The usual protocol. Families shifted in their seats. Soldiers stood at attention. Photographers moved into position. Colonel Hartman took the microphone. Started reading the list of awards and recognitions. Bronze Stars. Army Commendation Medals. Certificates of Achievement. Each recipient walked to the stage. Shook hands. Posed for photos. Returned to formation. Standard. Professional. Exactly as planned. Then Hartman paused. Looked at his notes. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have a special guest. General James McKinley, Commander of United States Special Operations Command, has joined us today. The room shifted. People sat straighter. This wasn't on the program. General McKinley's attendance was confirmed, but his role was supposed to be observational. He was there to watch, not participate. Hartman looked confused. Glanced at me standing off to the side. I met his eyes. Said nothing. The general walked onto the stage from the wings. 4 stars on each shoulder. Ribbons that told the story of 35 years of service. The kind of presence that changes the air in a room. He took the microphone from Hartman. Gently. Professionally. But the gesture was clear. I'm in charge now. Thank you, Colonel, General McKinley said. His voice carried. Calm. Authoritative. I apologize for the surprise, but there's a recognition I need to make personally. Hartman stepped back. Still confused. The room was silent. 6 months ago, the general continued, I requested a specific soldier for a classified operation. An operation that required someone with exceptional analytical skills, operational experience, and the ability to work in denied environments with minimal support. I felt every eye in the room trying to figure out who he was talking about. This soldier spent 4 months embedded with a special operations task force in East Africa. Developed intelligence packages that led to 3 successful raids against high-value targets. Prevented a major attack on a U.S. embassy. Did all of this while operating undercover, which meant no recognition, no awards, no acknowledgement of the work being done. The general's eyes scanned the room. Found me. Held my gaze. Staff Sergeant Porter, front and center. I walked to the stage. Every step measured. Professional. My hands didn't shake. I'd done this before, walked into rooms where I was underestimated, where people made assumptions based on age or rank or gender, or the fact that my job title didn't scream, combat operations. What Colonel Hartman didn't know, what he couldn't have known because everything about my last assignment was classified at levels that don't appear in standard personnel files, was that I hadn't been analyzing reports in an air-conditioned office. I'd been in Mogadishu. In Nairobi. In places where American military presence was officially non-existent. Embedded with a joint special operations task force tracking al-Shabaab leadership and preventing attacks on U.S. interests in the Horn of Africa. My job wasn't to brief generals from a secure facility. My job was to be on the ground. In safe houses that weren't safe. In meetings with sources who could turn on us at any moment. In vehicles that moved through hostile territory with the constant awareness that one wrong turn could mean compromise, capture, or death. I'd spent 4 months doing pattern-of-life analysis on targets in real time. Not from satellite imagery reviewed days later. From direct observation. From human intelligence I'd helped develop. From operations where I was close enough to see the target's faces and know that if my analysis was wrong, if my intelligence was faulty, American soldiers would die. The intelligence packages I developed led to 3 raids. 3 successful captures of high-value targets who'd been planning attacks on soft targets. Hotels, embassies, aid workers. One of those targets was planning a vehicle-borne IED attack on the U.S. Embassy in Nairobi that would have killed dozens, maybe hundreds. We stopped it. Captured the planners. Seized the explosives. Prevented a catastrophe that would have been international news. But I couldn't tell anyone. Couldn't explain where I'd been or what I'd done. The operation was classified. My role was classified. Even the fact that US forces were operating in some of those areas was classified. So when I'd arrived at Fort Bragg 6 months ago with orders that listed my assignment as administrative support, I'd accepted it. Let people assume I was a typical intelligence analyst. Let them think I spent my days in a cubicle running database queries and building PowerPoint slides. Let Colonel Hartman think I was a nobody who'd never done anything that mattered. Because silence does something to people. It lets them reveal who they are, what they value, what they think makes someone worthy of respect. And sometimes, that information is more valuable than any correction you could offer. I'd known General McKinley would be at the ceremony. I'd known because his aide, Colonel Stevens, had called me personally 2 weeks ago. Asked if I'd be attending. Said the general wanted to present something. I'd asked him not to make it a big deal. These ceremonies were for people who could be publicly recognized. People whose families could understand what they'd done and be proud of visible achievements. My work was different. My family couldn't know where I'd been. My awards ceremony would be small, quiet, held in a classified facility with only the people who were read into the operation present. But Colonel Stevens had said the general insisted. Said I deserved public recognition for work that couldn't be fully explained but could at least be acknowledged. So I'd agreed. But I hadn't told anyone. Hadn't mentioned it to Colonel Hartman when he'd questioned my competence. Hadn't defended myself when he'd called me a nobody who'd never done anything that mattered. I'd just let him talk. Let him build his narrative. Let him feel certain about his assessment. Because in a few minutes, he'd understand how wrong he was. And I wouldn't have to say a word. The walk to the stage felt long. I was aware of every eye on me. Colonel Hartman's confused expression. The other officers trying to figure out who I was and why a 4-star general had called me forward. My fellow intelligence analysts in the back rows, sitting up straighter, surprised. I reached the stage. Climbed the steps. Stopped in front of General McKinley. He looked at me the way commanders look at soldiers they respect. Not condescending. Not surprised that someone like me could do the work. Just recognition. Professional acknowledgement between two people who understood what real service looked like. Staff Sergeant Porter, he said, his voice carrying across the silent room. You volunteered for an assignment that most senior NCOs would have declined. You operated in denied territory with minimal support and maximum risk. The intelligence you developed was critical to our counterterrorism operations in East Africa. He paused. Let the room absorb that information. You conducted yourself with exceptional courage and professionalism. You represented the best of what this army asks of its soldiers. He held up a medal case. It is my honor to present you with the Defense Meritorious Service Medal for your actions during Operation Sentinel Guard. The room was completely silent. No one moved. The general pinned the medal to my uniform himself. His hands steady. Practiced. Then he stepped back. And saluted me. A 4-star general. Saluting a staff sergeant. It's not protocol. Generals don't salute enlisted soldiers. Enlisted soldiers salute generals. But he did it anyway. Held the salute. Formal. Respectful. The kind of gesture that communicates more than words ever could. I returned the salute. Sharp. Professional. Everything I'd been trained to do. Then he extended his hand. I shook it. Thank you for your service, Staff Sergeant, he said quietly. And thank you for being willing to do the work no one sees. It's an honor, sir. He nodded. Stepped back. Gestured for me to return to formation. I walked off the stage. Past Colonel Hartman, whose face had gone completely white. Past the officers who were seeing me differently now. Past the photographers who'd started snapping pictures the moment the general had saluted. I returned to my place. Stood at attention. Waited for the ceremony to continue. The ceremony ended 30 minutes later. Normal proceedings. More awards. More recognitions. But the energy in the room had changed. People kept glancing at me. Whispering. Trying to figure out what had just happened. I stayed in formation. Professional. Calm. Waiting for dismissal like everyone else. When we were finally released, I started walking toward the exit. Wanted to avoid the crowd. Avoid the questions I couldn't answer fully. Avoid the attention that made me uncomfortable. Colonel Hartman intercepted me. Moved quickly. Deliberately. Blocked my path. "Staff Sergeant Porter," he said. His voice was different now. Careful. Missing the condescension from earlier. "I need to speak with you." "Sir." He looked around. People were watching. Other officers. Enlisted soldiers. Families still filing out of the bleachers. "Not here," he said. "My office." 20 minutes. I wanted to say no. Wanted to tell him there was nothing to discuss. But he was still a colonel. Still my superior officer, at least on paper. "Yes, sir." I went to the latrine first. Splashed water on my face. Looked at my reflection. The metal on my chest was still new. Still felt strange. I was used to operating in silence, to doing work that never got acknowledged, to being underestimated because the truth was classified. This public recognition, felt wrong. Felt like exposure I didn't want. But the general had insisted. And I understood why. Not for me. For the other soldiers like me. The ones doing classified work in dangerous places while people assumed they were pushing papers in safe offices. The ones who couldn't explain where they'd been or what they'd done but deserved recognition anyway. So I'd accepted the medal. Stood on that stage. Let everyone see that sometimes the people you dismiss are the ones doing work you can't imagine. I walked to Colonel Hartman's office. Knocked. Enter. He was sitting behind his desk. Looked smaller somehow. Like the office was too big for him now. "Close the door," he said. I did. Remained standing at attention. "At ease, Staff Sergeant." He gestured to a chair. "Please. Sit." I sat. Waited. He stared at his desk. At the papers there. At anything except me. "I owe you an apology," he said finally. Each word slow. Deliberate. "What I said this morning. About you being a nobody. About not having done anything that matters." He looked up. "That was wrong. And inappropriate. And I'm sorry." I didn't respond. Didn't need to. "I made assumptions," he continued. "Based on your age. Your rank. Your job description. Based on things that..." He stopped. Started again. "Based on things that don't tell the whole story." "Sir, it's fine." "It's not fine, Staff Sergeant." His voice was firm now. "I'm a colonel. I've been in this army for 23 years. I should know better than to judge a soldier's value based on what I can see in their file or what I think their job is." He leaned back in his chair. "But I did. And a 4-star general just publicly corrected me in front of 300 people." The room was quiet. Outside, I could hear soldiers moving through the building. Normal base operations continuing. "Can you tell me what you did?" Hartman asked. "The operation the general mentioned?" "Most of it's classified, sir. But some of it isn't." I considered. Chose my words carefully. I was embedded with a Special Operations Task Force for 4 months. Conducted intelligence operations in support of counterterrorism objectives in East Africa. Developed targeting packages. The work prevented attacks on U.S. interests. "You were in hostile territory?" "Yes, sir." "In danger?" "Yes, sir." He nodded slowly. "Processing. And you couldn't tell anyone?" Couldn't explain what you'd done or where you'd been. No, sir. Not until it was declassified. Which might be years from now. Or never. So when I called you a nobody who'd never done anything that mattered. He closed his eyes. You just stood there. Didn't defend yourself. Didn't explain. I couldn't explain, sir. And even if I could, I didn't need to. He looked at me. Really looked at me. Like he was seeing me for the first time. You're right, he said. You didn't need to. Because the truth came out anyway. He stood. Extended his hand. Staff Sergeant Porter, I was wrong about you. And I apologize. Not just for what I said, but for the assumption behind it. That visible achievement is the only kind that matters. I shook his hand. Thank you, sir. For what it's worth, he said, I'm going to remember this. Remember that some of the most important work in this army happens in silence. By people who can't be publicly recognized. Who don't get parades or ceremonies or their names in the base newspaper. That would be worth something, sir. He nodded. Sat back down. Looked tired suddenly. Like the day had aged him. You're dismissed, Staff Sergeant. And, thank you. For your service. The real service. The kind I'll never fully understand. I left his office. Walked through the building toward the parking lot. The metal felt heavy on my chest. The attention felt uncomfortable. But as I pushed through the doors into the sunlight, I thought about Colonel Hartman's face during the ceremony. The moment when the general had saluted me. The visible shift in his understanding of who I was and what I'd done. I hadn't needed to say a word. Hadn't needed to defend myself. Hadn't needed to explain or justify or prove anything. The truth had spoken for itself. I drove off base. Headed toward my apartment in Fayetteville. 20-minute drive. Afternoon traffic. Normal civilian life happening around me while I processed what had just happened. My phone buzzed. Text from Colonel Stevens, General McKinley's aide. The general wanted me to pass along his regards. He said you handled that with typical grace. Said you're a credit to the army. I texted back. Thank you, sir. Please tell the general I appreciate his recognition. He also said he has another assignment coming up. Classified. High priority. Said he'd like you on the team if you're interested. I stared at that message for a long time. Sitting at a red light. Thinking about the last 4 months in East Africa. The operations. The risk. The constant awareness that one mistake could mean compromise or capture or death. Thinking about whether I wanted to do it again. Whether I wanted to go back into the field. Back into denied territory. Back into the work that couldn't be acknowledged or explained or celebrated. The light turned green. I drove. Texted back. I'm interested, sir. Because that's what I did. That's who I was. Not because I needed recognition. Not because I wanted medals or ceremonies or people to know what I'd done. Because the work mattered. Because somewhere, right now, people were planning attacks on Americans. On embassies and hotels and schools and markets. And someone needed to find them. Stop them. Do the work that kept people safe. Someone needed to operate in silence while everyone else assumed they were nobody. I got home. Changed out of my dress blues. Put on civilian clothes. Jeans. T-shirt. Looked like anyone else. Could have been a student. An office worker. Someone who'd never deployed. Never operated in hostile territory. Never made decisions with lives hanging in the balance. That was the point. Blending in. Being underestimated. Letting people make assumptions while you do work they can't imagine. My phone rang. My mother. She'd been at the ceremony. Front row. Had seen everything. Maya, she said when I answered. Her voice was shaking. Why didn't you tell us? Your father and I had no idea what you'd been doing. East Africa. Counterterrorism operations. Why didn't you say something? I couldn't, Mom. It was classified. But you were in danger. You could have been killed. It's the job. Don't say that. Don't just say, it's the job, like it's nothing. She was crying now. We thought you were analyzing reports. Safe. In an office. And you were. She couldn't finish. I'm okay, Mom. I'm home. I'm safe. That man. The colonel. The one who spoke to you before the ceremony. Your father heard what he said. Called you a nobody. Said you'd never done anything that mattered. I closed my eyes. It's fine, Mom. It's not fine. He didn't know. Didn't understand. No, I agreed. He didn't. But he does now. She was quiet for a moment. The general. When he saluted you. I've never been more proud. And more terrified. Because I finally understood what you've been doing. I know, Mom. Promise me you'll be careful. Whatever you do next. Wherever they send you. I thought about Colonel Stevens's text. About the next assignment. About going back into the field. I promise, Mom. I'll be careful. We talked for a few more minutes. Normal conversation. She told me about my younger brother's new job. About my father's retirement plans. About ordinary life continuing while I'd been in East Africa doing extraordinary things. When we hung up, I sat on my couch. Quiet apartment. Normal surroundings. The medal was on my kitchen counter where I'd set it when I'd changed clothes. I looked at it. Thought about what it represented. Not just the work in East Africa. Not just the operations or the intelligence packages or the attacks we'd prevented. It represented a choice. The choice to do work that couldn't be explained. To accept being underestimated. To let people call you a nobody while you do things that matter. The choice to serve in silence. My phone buzzed again. Another text. This one from a number I didn't recognize. Staff Sergeant Porter, this is Major Chin. I was at the ceremony today. I run the intelligence section for 3rd Group. If you're ever looking for a stateside assignment where your skills would be valued, let me know. We need people like you. I smiled. Texted back. Thank you, sir. I'll keep that in mind. But I knew I wouldn't take that assignment. Wouldn't take the comfortable stateside job where my skills would be valued and my work would be visible and people would know what I did. Because that wasn't who I was. That wasn't what I did. I operated in denied territory. In places where American military presence was officially non-existent. Doing work that saved lives but couldn't be celebrated. Being underestimated because the truth was classified. That was my choice. My service. My rank earned in silence. And no amount of public recognition would change that. I didn't correct them. I didn't explain. They found out on their own. Silence is the rank. Like and comment if you understand.
If you enjoyed the story, subscribe now for stories where silence outranks noise, and the truth always shows up eventually.